Welcome. We're here today with Bruce McClure, author of Buy or Run, I'm a Real Home Inspector, Not a TV Celebrity.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to be here.
Bruce, we know that your book has been getting a lot of attention both in the USA and Canada, but today we're going to focus mostly on Canada. What is happening there?
Well, just like in 35 states and 3 provinces, the Ontario government has decided it's time to look into the licensing or regulating of home inspectors.
Interesting. Do you see this as a good thing?
In theory, licensing is a good thing. However,
what's the however all about?
Well, what we really need is good legislation. That's the real issue. To date, there's been 35 states and 3 provinces that have implemented some form of regulation or licensing. The however is, none of them have gotten it right.
That sounds hard to believe.
Yes, it is. Now, can you actually believe that in the government's report, point number 8 actually states, and I'm going to read it exactly the way it is, there should be no mandatory education requirement to become a home inspector.
You have got to be kidding.
Not at all. Further, the report goes on to state, and again, I'm actually going to read, consumers often rely on and trust their real estate agents and should have the right to allow their agents to recommend and even arrange the home inspection. Steve, tell me how that's consumer protection.
Well, as a consumer myself who's recently sold a home, I know that the real estate agent does have a vested interest in selling the home. So if they're organizing my home inspection, does this not put them in a conflict of interest?
Well, Steve, overall, that's what the book's all about. Why the system isn't working. Really, there's 2 big issues that haven't been dealt with.
And what are those 2 issues?
Well, to date, number 1, not a single government has really taken education of home inspectors seriously. Most accept 90 to 125 hours of education, home inspector passes exam, and voila, they're a home inspector.
So Bruce, what would be point number 2?
Point number 2 is the real big one. To date, out of the 35 governments in 3 provinces, not one has dealt with the problem that it's really the realtors controlling the home inspection industry. The problem is realtors that promote home inspectors that turn a blind eye and play down issues in order to promote their sale.
So Bruce, what's your position?
Well, Steve, in addition to the book, I've put together what I call my 5-point list. And what the list does is it deals with the issues that none of the other governments have dealt with so far. To date, I've distributed that list to all 105 members of Parliament in Ontario and directly in person to the Ministry of Consumer Services.
And are they listening to you?
In our meeting, they were definitely listening and asking very good questions. Are they really listening? Only time's going to tell.
So how about we jump into your 5-point list?
First, Steve, we'll summarize the 5 points and then we'll go back and discuss each one separately. Point number 1, we're going to talk about the education of home inspectors. Point number 2, we're going to talk about the education of realtors. Number 3, we're going to talk about errors and omissions insurance and what it really means and what it's all about. Number 4 is the real biggie. That's where we're going to deal with the conflict of the realtor and the home inspection. And of course, number 5, we're going to talk about what the governments should really be doing in the way of consumer protection.
That sounds like a lot of stuff.
It is.
So Bruce, let's take a closer look at the wording of point number 1.
Point 1, education of home inspectors. That colleges in Ontario implement a minimum 2-year full-time home inspection program to train future home inspectors. That such a course include the knowledge required to perform standardized home inspections, run a successful business, provide enough practical, hands-on experience to qualify the student to perform home inspections upon graduation.
Now Bruce, you stated earlier that most provinces and states that currently have licensing only require 90 to 150 hours of education plus an exam at the end of that course. Do you feel that this adequately prepares a person to become a home inspector and practice in their client's best interest?
Well, the way I can answer that is an electrician or a plumber need formal education and 6,000 to 9,000 hours of apprenticeship. And yet a couple hours for a home inspector is considered adequate to be inspecting their work?
So Bruce, now let's take a closer look at point number 2, the education of realtors.
Point number 2, education of realtors. that a 45 to 90-hour course regarding the house as a system, maintenance, and home inspections be implemented as part of the basic required education in order to gain a real estate license in Ontario. That such a course provide enough knowledge regarding the importance of the home inspection in order to instill an understanding and respect for a competent home inspection as well as inspectors' qualifications. That such a course be taught by licensed home inspectors and not exclusively by realtors.
Now, don't realtors currently have a vast knowledge of houses?
Well, Steve, that was a big shock to me. In 2008, I took a sabbatical from home inspection and acquired my real estate license. Of the 6 courses and the exams, 75% passed, and they were pretty tough. There was almost nothing to do with houses in all the education.
With the potential lack of knowledge that our realtors may possess, how do we trust them to adequately value our houses?
Well, Steve, that's probably one of the reasons that we have so much conflict between home inspectors that should know about houses and the realtors. My father was a career salesman, and Dad taught me the 3 rules of sales. Number 1 rule of sale, know your product. Number 2 rule of sale, know your product. And number 3 rule of sale, if you're ever in doubt, go back to rules 1 and 2. What more can I say?
So now let's take a closer look at point number 3, myths of errors and omissions insurance.
Point number 3, insurance. Insurance companies have used their power to set standards for housing, i.e. not insuring knob and tube wiring or 60 amp electrical. Insurance companies could be more vigilant and help set higher standards for the home inspection industry. 3.1, errors and omissions insurance industry. That insurance companies implement higher standards for the underwriting of home inspectors, possible examples being requiring higher education for inspectors, not insuring inspectors that perform inspections at night, not insuring inspectors that perform inspections without their client present, not insuring inspectors that perform more than 2, eventually 1, inspection in a single day, insist on a standard reporting system or at minimum a standard report summary for the inspection industry. 3.2, residential insurance industries. Because the residential insurance companies share the same vested interest as the consumer, it's suggested that they become more involved in the home inspection industry. In addition to the government licensing board, they be allowed to recommend home inspectors. With the insurance company's involvement as a value-added service to their clients, without conflict of interest, they could further supply home inspectors with a list of physical details that require identification in order to underwrite.
Now, Bruce, is errors and omissions insurance not a lot like a home warranty?
Steve, that's something that's very misunderstood by the general public. Just like your doctor, just like your lawyer, like your realtor, a good home inspector should have errors and omissions insurance. Does that mean that your lawyer's going to win the case and your doctor's going to be successful every time? No, it doesn't.
Now we're at point number 4, the big one, eliminating the realtor's conflict of interest. This gets much more complicated and is broken down into 3 sections. Let's take a closer look at it.
Point number 4, eliminating realtor's conflict of interest. 4.1, requirement of a home inspection. That the pre-purchase home inspection become a requirement for the transfer of real estate in Ontario. The government, years ago, set precedents for automobiles that are worth a fraction of the cost of a house. Making home inspections a requirement would ensure protection for consumers that are currently encouraged to not have a home inspection as a bargaining tool. 4.2, real estate offer of purchase and sale agreement. That the home inspection condition be removed from Appendix A of the real estate paperwork and be included in the formal standardized offer of purchase and sale agreement, and that the wording includes such statements as, within 6 days by a licensed home inspector of the purchaser's choosing, that the inspection be satisfactory to the purchaser. 4.3, realtor's conflict of interest. Further, that realtors, as part of the real estate transaction, be excluded from the recommending of home inspectors, and those that do or those that interfere with the home inspection process be subject to fines, disciplinary procedures, and the possibility of having their license to sell real estate suspended.
Okay, Bruce, point number 4.1, the requirement of a home inspection on all real estate transactions. This doesn't currently happen in all transactions. Does this not seem self-serving to the home inspection industry?
Yes, Steve. Initially, this may sound self-serving for the home inspectors, but what it really is consumer protection. What it's going to do is anybody that's involved in multiple offers, typically the first thing the realtors will tell them, we're saying, well, you've got to eliminate the home inspection or your offer won't be accepted. This is going to give protection to those people. Everybody will have the right to a home inspection, and yes, it is going to change the way realtors do business.
Now, point number 4.2 seems very confusing. Can you explain further?
Yes, Steve. The real estate transaction is wrought with paperwork. Some of the paperwork is a formalized document. Appendix A, which concerns me, is where the realtor actually makes up their own wording about the home inspection. And unfortunately, we have realtors that actually misuse that wording and negate the purpose of even having a home inspection. That's why for real consumer protection, I feel that we need the wording right in the formalized document that can't be changed.
Point number 4.3, the realtor's conflict of interest. What to you is the current conflict, and how would you best explain or take the realtor out of a position of conflict of interest?
Well, Steve, I guess this is number one, the reason for the book, the reason for everything that I'm about. To date, the biggest problem with our industry, as I've said, is the realtors trying to control the home inspection, trying to control selecting a home inspector that turns a blind eye, plays down issues, and basically protects their sale. In this situation, I now want to see, and some government has to do this. If this was a legal situation, if you were having a divorce, if you were suing somebody, would you go to their lawyer for advice? And that's exactly what's happening here. This is the consumer's chance for independent advice. So why is the realtor recommending the home inspector? So we now are going to totally eliminate the realtor, actually fine them if they interfere or recommend a home inspector, and with proper licensing, good strong associations, there will be lots of good home inspectors out there and true consumer protection.
Now, let's take a closer look at point number 5, government involvement.
Point number 5, government involvement. That the Ontario government be a true leader in qualifying home inspectors and the home inspection process. That the government of Ontario not just look at minimal qualifications and insurance as the base issues. Realizing that in the legal system, independent legal advice is a given, the formalized home inspection should be deemed as the buyer's opportunity for independent advice regarding the condition of physical real property. Further, realizing that plumbers and electricians require 6,000 to 9,000 hours of apprenticeship in addition to classroom training, it's scandalous to discover that many governments accept online courses with non-proctored exams, some of which can be acquired within hours, as the acceptable educational requirement to qualify a home inspector for licensing. Summary: that in the name of quality legislation, consumer protection, the coming of age of the home inspection industry, the Government of Ontario support the implementation of points 1 to 4 above and endorse the concept of the home inspection being the consumer's right for independent advice regarding the condition of their physical real property.
Wow, Bruce, that really says a lot. Do you have anything more to add to that?
Well, I've said a lot already, and I think that pretty much sums it up. What we need now is a government that's going to pick up the ball and run with it and really implement consumer protection in the world of home inspection.
Well, somebody seems to have a lot of work cut out for them.
I think you're talking about me there. I'm trying hard. I'm really trying, and I'm dedicated to this. Thank you.
Been a pleasure talking with you.